Hello, hello, hello. We are now in April and we are on our third installment of Coffee Talk with SMARK, Arena Pay, and Intentional Business Coaching. And we are with Dr. Sakira Jackson, Heather Tuason from Arena Pay, and obviously your host and founder CEO of SMARK, SMARK, not SMART. Um, uh, Amber Payden. And we are so excited to have everyone here today. I hope you're joining in. If you do not have the opportunity to join in live, this will be living on LinkedIn, as well as YouTube and our Facebook page, as well as all of these wonderful women's companies and their personal pages. So we're going to talk today about something that's I think every founder, small business, deals with, which is the fundamentals of fundraising. What is fundraising? What does it mean to fundraise? How do you deal with investors? How do you deal with yourself? How do you handle rejection? So we're going to talk all about all of that. And we have some wonderful topics that we're going to start with, and we're going to lead the conversation with Heather today in regards to what most people are thinking about, right? But which is the money, and we're going to end the first stage of it with Dr. Zakira, which most people don't think about, they need to think about with this, which is the mind. So let's go ahead and get started. Heather, can you please explain to us a little bit about what is fundraising? What are the types of fundraising you can do, and what does that mean for different industries and small businesses?
Yeah, absolutely, Amber. And good morning to everybody. So we'll start this off with one of the core components we've talked about in the past is know when you need money, right? And in a lot of cases, businesses scramble and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm running out of funds, and therefore I need to go get a loan. I need to go get an investor. I need to get some type of capital to go make that next purchase, or that purchase could actually be your payroll, a marketing effort, or a new product build, or something to that effect. So first, starting with knowing when you need money starts with a financial forecast. We've talked about that in past episodes. If you want to know how to build one yourself, or what resources to it, or what an assist along the way there, go back to one of our prior episodes. But once you know through your financial forecast around when you're going to need capital and how much you might need. There are many options. There are private investors out there. There are, I'll call them professional investors out there, venture capitalists, etc. There is also bank lending. And there are other lending facilities out there too. Today, we're really going to focus on that venture capital kind of investor component of fundraising. So if you are interested in learning more about how to get a loan as well, reach out to us separately, or we might have a future episode on that. Or maybe if we've got some time at the end, we can dive into what makes a successful loan application, because they are quite different in their approaches between whether you decide to go down the investor route or whether you decide to go down the kind of bank or financial institution funding. So the core components of going for a capital raise through the venture capital kind of network, so to speak, is that through a pitch deck. You've got to sell yourself as a business and sell yourself to a set of investors that believe in not only you and your mission, but also the business model that you've put together and the product that you're selling and the customer base that you have. And I know we'll talk about that in much more depth here coming up. And then as you onboard investors, we'll talk about how you manage them from a cap table perspective. And then also like the pros and cons of when to dilute your business and when not to. Because I think those are core things to think about. I think a lot of people think the venture capital world is this sexy world of I've got to get venture backed as a business. That's not always the case. So knowing what's right for your business is also important.
And what is delusion? Can you explain that for everyone? What does that mean? Because you hear that a lot and people use that word a lot, and sometimes it's not necessarily used the best way. So I think we need to be clear on what is delusion in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So think about the number of people that own your company, and say that there are 100 people that own it. Well, they each have 1/100th of that company. And the more you add to it and you expand that kind of ownership to say 1,000 people, then at that point in time, you're 1/1000th of the company. Therefore, your dilution, you have less and less ownership of that company over time. The more and more you dilute it, the more and more basically you take capital from others instead of yourself, or further invest in yourself.
Got it. So if somebody, you see this a lot with pitch competitions, right? You see companies that say this is we're hosting a pitch competition. You're going to receive 20,000 non-diluted. What does that mean?
That's more like a grant in a lot of cases when accelerators or hackathons or pitch competitions give you a reward at the end. That they're basically expecting like either nothing in return, or they're going to become a part of your cap table, but not change the valuation of your company in any regard. So they are basically, it's treated a lot like a grant, and like I'm giving you money to continue to grow and invest in your business.
That's good to know, because that's something that people have come to SMARK and asked about because they see it a lot. And some founders, particularly this is more of a terms for startup, what we're talking about, or people really looking for investors. Some people don't know the terms. They don't understand what a lot of things mean when it comes to giving up equity, and they'll get very excited about low funds, and they're giving away like high percentages of their business. So with that being said, and you were talking about dilution, let's go into cap tables. And what does that mean in regards to cap tables? You talked about the different types of fundraising, but let's talk more about what are cap tables? What does equity mean? Is it different than stock? And what does that mean for a founder?
Absolutely. So there are a couple of different ways you can fund a company. One is from a debt perspective. You get a loan and you pay the loan back. That actually has nothing to do with your cap table in a lot of regards. The equity component of your company, if you decide to issue equity, which you don't have to as an organization. As a business, you do not have to issue stock at all. You can continue to remain a kind of just a privately held company with no stock issuance at all. And that's a viable path for a lot of businesses. It depends like your growth trajectory as to how much capital you're going to need at what point in time. So the cap table itself is all around that equity component of managing your investors. And that will be what basically percentage and share value that each person who has invested or organization that has invested owns. As a result, when you have any type of payout distributions, they could be dividends, shareholder, payouts, etc., or ultimately the next generation of investment into your company, or selling the company off altogether. That's when the cap table becomes very relevant, because it shifts the ownership components of your business.
I love that. That's great to know. And that's actually, I think, just from my experience dealing with founders that are not privy or didn't come from that world, and they're just starting out, they have no clue what all of that means. And honestly, like even when I knew going in corporate and working with different things, when I didn't have my own startup, coming into it and now actually practicing it is very different as well. So that kind of gets us to like, what does it really mean to prepare your mind? Because there is a mind shift that you have to have when it comes to getting into these conversations, and you might feel overwhelmed. You may not know all of the things that go into it. So, Dr. Sakira, can you talk to us a little bit more? You're on mute, just an FYI, about what that means to prepare your mind for more intimidating conversations. And Heather, you could chime in as well. But would like to start with Dr. Sakira on this one.
I think I call it getting your mind right. That's what they start with that. Because when you decide to own your business, the majority of people are thinking, I've got 100% of the ownership. And to set yourself up for success, you have to first be prepared to get all of the resources that you need for the business to be successful. And what that means is separating the business from yourself. So recognizing that this LLC, this corporation, this partnership, whatever it is that you've created is an entity in and of itself. And your job as the business owner, as a fiduciary person, is to figure out what resources does this business need. And so it might need financial support in order for it to grow. It's like thinking of it like a plant. If you don't give it the right sun and the right water, it can't grow gravitropically, meaning get the right roots so that it can support this business that you're growing. So your mindset has to be one in which it says that this business that I'm creating may have a need for outside resources in terms of additional funding. But in order to do that, I will have to separate myself and determine how much of the ownership am I willing to trade for the support that the business needs. And so as you start to talk to the angel investors or, any venture capitalists or any partner for that matter, determining how much of the ownership is really in terms of looking at the business as a whole pie and saying, if I've decided I need to keep 51% and have the ability to give away 49%, my mindset has to be, I am actually determining what resources does my business need in order for it to grow, and what can I still keep that would allow me to feel comfortable in ownership, but know that it'll allow my business to, again, grow gravitropically, so then it can grow phototropically, which is the stuff that we see above ground. And our minds have to remember that if you don't feed your business the resources that it needs, it will never grow. So holding on to it is really you killing your business. So mindsets for people always has to be about separating yourself from the business and then thinking, okay, now what do I need to feed this business for it to grow? Does that make sense?
So you're saying that the first step, which ultimately would give you more confidence going into these meetings, would be to look at the resources and things in the business that need support, separation from yourself. So then when you go into these conversations with investors, you have a different mindset around how it is going to affect the business. So are you ultimately saying that it's because people don't separate it, they go in with more emotion connected to it?
Absolutely. If you think of it, when we talk about the intentional CEO mindset and we talk about the 5 aspects, the management overall aspects of business in terms of marketing, production, sales, finance, and people. When you're a business owner, your mindset is, I got to get all these things done. That's what you're thinking about, is I have to do all of these things. But if you look at the business in and of itself as a separate entity, and your job being to find the resources that the business needs, then I'm actually looking, okay, do I need to partner with someone who can bring up that resource, whether that be a financial resource, a sales resource, a marketing resource, and do I give away a portion of ownership for that resource? Because I think the first thing people almost always think about is the venture capital side of support in terms of financial. But there are a lot of partnerships that you can put in place as you grow your business that are going to be what I would call an equity partnership, but it's sweat equity, because they're bringing to the table some resource that you don't have. So it's not just the venture capital in terms of the money, it's also what other additional piece, if I'm looking at those 5 aspects of my business, that I might need to partner with someone to get that resource into the business. Because fiduciary is not just financial. Because if I don't have, let's say I got the money, but I don't have the resource for marketing, or I don't have the resource for sales. I'm just a tech person and I know that technology that I've created. If I don't also make sure that I've gotten those types of partnerships, raising funds, meaning capital, is just going to be throwing money at something that doesn't have the support that it needs for it to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. One thing also, as you think about, pitching, venture capital company, like we kind of are centering the conversation around, is you will have to describe what your business needs in your pitch deck and in your conversation. So one thing that's super important that I think you're alluding to is that you have to be self-aware of what you're not good at.
Right. That's what
absolutely
kind of where.
And that is this point around distancing yourself and kind of looking at your business from a third party perspective in so many ways. And I think that kind of authenticity and like just humbleness in your approach to your business is also recognized in the investor space. And going into those conversations with that mindset is extremely important.
I think also, and we were talking about businesses and investing, but I want to tie this into the other side of my business, which is the real estate investing side. Because just like we raise capital for traditional businesses, real estate investors, those are actual business investments. And when you're going out to raise capital to acquire a property, for instance, you still have to build the pitch deck. You still have to identify all of the parties who are going to produce in this growth. So it doesn't matter whether you have a traditional business or whether you're funding a acquisition of an additional opportunity, whether that be a real estate LLC or an actual property. The same steps are going to be required. You got to look at what are the resources that you're going to need. And you're going to also have to show that in the pitch deck in a way that the investors can see, not only can this business be viable, but how are they going to get their money back? Because ultimately, they're going to want to know, what's my return on investment? How am I going to be looking at this? Where's my cash on cash going to be? And am I going to get my money out? Otherwise, they're not going to want to fund you. So being aware of that as you develop the pitch deck is the front end part.
How do you become aware? I think that's like I know for myself, like as a startup founder and I had a company prior, I had experience prior to that, right? Like where I knew certain things I needed in place, which in hindsight became too much because then I created departments and orgs that I didn't really need at the time, right? But then there's people that really have no clue and are very overwhelmed with even someone controlling anything, but they have to actively become self-aware, right? To your point, Heather, to your point, Dr. Sakira, like bringing those 2 points together, how does somebody even begin to be self-aware? What does that even look like?
Self-awareness comes from, first of all, recognizing that what it is you bring to the table. The majority of business owners ultimately come with an idea and perhaps some technical expertise. So they may have been, let's just use a basic example. They were a hairdresser. We're going to go very, very basic. I worked in a shop. I did people's hair and I'm good at it, but I want to own my own business now. But what I actually have right now is the skill set of cutting hair. But in reality, to grow this business, there's a skill set, there's a tool set, and there's a mindset. So then I got to look at these three aspects. I know I got the skill set, right? I understand. I know I can do this. What tools am I going to need? By looking at the tools, I'm saying, okay, what are the main aspects of business? Marketing, sales, finance, production, and people. Which of those do I know? Where can I bring that to the table? And what other resources do I need? So let me look at, if I know that I have the production part, but I don't have the ops part, I don't have the marketing. I don't have the ongoing sales. I don't know how to grow my people, and I don't have the finance. Now I've got to go and figure out how to bring those resources. If I've got to fundraise, where am I going to go get that? That's the mindset piece, sitting down and spending the time to become aware of what you have and what you need. That's how you become aware, because you look at what I would call being real with yourself, getting your mind right in a space that says, here's what I have and here's what I need. Now, where can I go get those additional resources, whether it be financial resources, op resources? Do I need to go to the SBA? Do I need to go to a training course? Do I need to hire a marketing person? Actually spending the time to understand what are the aspects of business I know and what are the aspects of business I need to add to. Does that help? Make sense?
Yeah. Yes, it does. I would say, to add to that, just really knowing like what type of entrepreneur you want to be before that, because there's a lot of people that are tech guys, right? Or real estate, and they really just want to make like 400,000 a year and pay their bills and go on vacation. I'm like, you don't need all of what you're doing to do that. Or if you're a tech guy and you hate people, you might want to set it up in a way to just sell your IP, like
sell your IP.
You don't have to be a Jeff Bezos, and I think that's where people start, or Greg Cardone, or Craig, what is this? The Cardone man.
Greg Cardone, yeah.
Greg Cardone. You don't have to be those people to be successful and sustainable and an entrepreneur. And I think that's some of the gaps with people. Like, you can literally identify, Amber, I want to make 100, I want to bring home 175,000. I want to take care of my kids. I want them to play sports and do private school, and I want to go on vacation twice a year, but I don't want to go into a corporate office. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. You don't have to do that, but going and pitching a bunch of investors is going to exhaust your energy, because that may not be the answer.
It may not be who you are. But I think that's going back to your question of awareness. That's one of the exercises that we do around FU money. Because when you do that for you exercise, you have an opportunity to really envision what is it actually, what does success actually look like? Because if you spend all your time doing the fundraising, because that's what you think you want to do, and then you find out that in order to fundraise, now I got to work directly with these angel investors all the time, and I've got to report to them, and I got to write reports, and I've got to do all these things that I never thought I was going to do, or that I left corporate America not to do. So what helps is helping entrepreneurs, whether they're new or actually, successful entrepreneurs, is identifying, like you say, Amber, what type of entrepreneur are you? And who do you really want to be? Because that's when you're getting your mind right. And then identifying what you already have in place and what can you put in place. Because you can already be a successful entrepreneur and realize, I could hire somebody to do this fundraising and take myself out of the business, or work myself out of the business. That's a possibility too. I have a client who did that. They worked himself out. Now he works 20 hours a week and lives in Florida.
Right.
So, yeah. And he still has a multi-million-dollar business that's running every day. So it is possible, but you have to know who you are in order to get there.
Yeah, I think you're touching on something that's interesting. First, you have to know who you are personally, and then you have to disconnect yourself from your business and know what your business needs. And those could be two different things.
Yes,
in some cases. And businesses take on many forms and paths and journeys, and they might not be the journey you want to be on. And just being open-minded to the fact that that journey might have you in a different role in the company. It might have you, requesting capital and other investors with information, with, industry connections that then create a governance structure over your business, which might or might not be comfortable to you. And that controlling nature of an entrepreneur is in an entrepreneur's DNA. And that is often what entrepreneurs do, have a different type of kind of persona in so many ways. And that is something to take into account for the business. One thing that you mentioned that kind of led me to, an inventory as you were inventorying who I am. One thing for your business is also to just putting together your business plan. There are a lot of templates out there that you can pick up. Just Google a template on your type of industry. If you don't have that plan done, it's always recommended that you do it. It evaluates your target market, your investor growth rates, all of those things. And of course, I always am the champion for your financial plan, which is the numbers and a 3-year forecast for your business, which is basically a part of your broader business plan. So that's just another tool out there. Some people go at it different ways, whether it's, doing a self-inventory, or there's some tactical tools out there like a business plan development process that can
even when they
as
do
little
that,
as 2 days to do. I mean,
and even when they do that, Heather, can they do that after they've already been in business? Because a lot of people start businesses and then find out, oh, I don't really have a plan.
Absolutely. You should be refining your business plan and your forecast, for that matter, on a very frequent basis, depending on your industry. And because it takes many turns. Look at the economic environment we're in right now. Interest rates are high. So maybe a loan is not the right option, and investor capital is going to be expensive. Is there a way, can I adjust my business plan to kind of wait this time out? That might be a good choice for your business.
Go back to traditional marketing. I've said that so many times to people. I mean, there's all different ways to market and promote. It can be very grassroots and guerrilla. I'm just amazed at how many people do not incorporate more marketing initiatives and sales initiatives into their plan. They stick to just pure digital ads and social media. And I'm like, that takes a while. You can get a big reach, but you have to know what you're doing and you have to test it, versus just going out door to door or hosting an event and saying, this is what I'm selling, this is what I'm doing. The percentage, just data shows all the time, 30 to 40% higher conversion rates when you are in person with someone. The sales cycle is shorter too, because people know you, they trust you. So if you're getting in front of them and having a deeper conversation, then they're going to be more inclined to actually purchase and trust the product a little b't more. And so I tell people, when you are in downtimes like this, it may not be an investor option. It may not be, a loan. And that's the bootstrapping aspect of it, that people don't want to really have to do.
They don't want to do.
Right.
I want to go back to something Heather said, just so as an example, in terms of fundraising. We're in the midst of a property we were going to buy in Texas, and we were in the middle of fundraising. And with the interest rates and everything, we put the offer in, we went through this whole thing. This is right now. And I said it in front of 5 of my key investors over the last week. And to the number, every last one of them, and they're the private funders, we're raising like $4 million. They all said, money's too tight. The feds are giving you 5%. So on this particular deal, you would have to give them somewhere between 10 and 12% in order for them to be willing to invest. And you weren't going to be able to make sure that they got the return over the course of the 5 years. So in looking at fundraising, I'm saying, even though you might think it was a good idea to go into the fundraise, you also have to consider that you might get down the path and then have to change course based on the economic conditions. So it's not just, oh, this is what I want to do. You also have to be paying attention to the economic conditions. You need to have some investment advisors who you can check in with to determine, is this a good investment at this time based on what I'm bringing to the table, so that it's not just you as the business owner making that decision. Your advisors are able to take a look at what you're wanting to fundraise and help you make good, sound financial decisions as you're trying to fundraise as well.
Yeah, you raise a good point. And around, you could already be in the midst of some type of fundraise or a lending a conversation. Know this though, that even if you're in those conversations, I want to see them through to see what the deal terms are. There often is, in the VC world, there is this term called term sheet that has that is issued to you. It's not a binding term sheet. It is the parameters of what the deal would look like, how much it would dilute you, what your cap table would look like, what your valuation would be, and what the terms of taking the money are. And you do not have to move forward with after a term sheet. That is just that it is a stopping point in that business conversation with that investor to say, hey, here's what I think the deal could look like. And you can negotiate on a term sheet, of course, but you can also just turn it away.
Yeah. And that's important to know that as you're going through this process, you always have the opportunity to pivot if it doesn't fit with what your goals are, what your objective is, or what the economic conditions are currently.
Right.
And where their mindset is, where the investor mindset is. Like, I've turned down investors probably more than a lot, because I'm not, if you really know what you're trying to do and the type of business you're trying to grow, certain people don't need to be in your business, and I've learned that the hard way in many ways, from hiring to vendors, but even investors, because you will then be reporting to them with your own business and your own vision. And if it is not aligned, then you could potentially get yourself kicked out of your own company.
And it has happened to many people along the way.
Right. And they're just sitting there stuck and confused because they're not there. Even the angels, you believe they're angels, but they are still, there's all types of angels. No, I always joke.
There is that.
But you do, I really am passionate about that, because just as much as you identify your audience as your customers, and you niche down to that and really focus in on who is going to be the best fit for your product, which I also think people don't always do that. You have to do that with investors too. Go out to lunch with them, talk to them, see how they deal with things. Do they talk about their family? Do they drink a lot? Are they doing other recreational drugs? How do you feel about that from a core value standpoint? Those are all.
I love core values, man. I'm going to clap on that,
because you can see even in your leadership. Do you want this person if they're doing certain things that don't really align with your belief system? Because that represents your business and it represents you. And there's going to be this cognitive dissonance if they think this is totally fine to just take, other stakeholders or partners to a strip club, and you don't believe in that at all.
Whoa, this conversation just went south.
I think that's important, because
it's very important.
There's different views on that. Taking people,
right.
Some people don't care, they're not bothered by that. It's not a big deal to bring on clients and people to do certain things like that, honestly. And if you don't believe in that, that could be an issue.
I think really important that is the word you said, which is core values. Heather
was saying something.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
No, that's okay. I was going to say that if you are in a situation where you're evaluating whether you want to take on an investor and you're worried about their kind of core values, kind of the morals, etc., go ask to call one of their portfolio companies for reference. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't call the first one on their list either. I would call the CEO of a portfolio company that they have already invested in to ask their management style, the pros and cons of working with them. Mm-hmm. Those are, and CEOs all the time want to help other CEOs, just like we're here today, right? So they will give you a reference point in that conversation. And actually, I recommend doing that with anyone who's gotten to the term sheet stage of a VC conversation.
Right.
I think if I could just add to that, I think you also really want to know what your core values are before you start having these conversations, because you don't want to get in the midst of the fundraising and start having these, what I would call emotions bubbling up as you get in situations and not really understand why it's happening. But as you understand that, integrity, accountability, follow through, or whatever, respect, whatever those are as core values for you, it will help you in the conversations to determine who's a good fit for you and your company.
Right. And I said that specifically to create the shock value because that has happened.
I believe it.
No, it's literally, I mean, being in sales and being in tech, I've seen it corporately as well as I've seen it in my own business. Not SMARK specifically, but people that want to help sell and do certain things, they tell me certain things that are just like, you think are wild, but it's very standard across certain industries for sales and partners and connecting and having fun and getting to know people. And it is, you really do need to think about little things like that. Because if you sign something and realize like, oh my God, I don't agree with this like at all, it's going to be much harder to get out of that contract.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you're bound.
Yeah. So we have like 5 minutes left. Speaking of bound, and what that means when it comes to, obviously rejecting investors that don't fit. Let's talk about dealing with rejection and how that feels, what that means for someone and their mindset around walking through the nose, not worrying about them. What does that look like for you, Dr. Sakira? Heather, what are your recommendations as well? Dr. Sakira, you'll lead this one, and then Heather, just piggyback off of that conversation. So what does it mean to overcome no's and objections or rejection?
I think first and foremost, if we think of it in perspective of, if you're not getting any no's, it's because you're not taking any action. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing you want to say. So getting to the no is actually where you want to go, because you want to get past the no so that you can get to the yes. And the no's tell you what it is that investors are looking for. Mm-hmm. They tell you how you are presenting, how you're showing up, so that you can refine your presentation in such a way that you can get to the yes. So the first part of the looking at the no is, I need this information. And the only way I will gather it is if I go through the no's so that I can get to the yes.
Right.
The second part is the rejections are not rejecting you. Mm-hmm. Because you separate the business from yourself, understanding that you have to be better at choosing the connections to present the opportunity. Right. One of the biggest lessons I learned was that I'm sharing an opportunity and not selling. So when you're sharing the opportunity to invest in what business you have or whatever opportunity you have, making sure that you understand that the rejection of the opportunity has more to do with the rejector than it does with you. They are rejecting it based on what their requirements are. Because most people who are investing have a strategy and they have a type of business or a type of opportunity that they're going to invest in. They have requirements and parameters. And if they say no to you, it's because your opportunity did not meet their parameters. So perhaps you want to look at it as, how do I better identify investors whose buying strategies, investing strategies align with my opportunity? The second part of the mindset piece is going into it with the perception that this is a resource that my business needs. Right. And so my job is to find that particular resource, wherever it may be, that aligns with what my business needs. So I'm not being rejected. My business isn't being rejected. What I have presented is not in alignment. So it's an alignment issue versus a personality issue. And most people take it personally. But then we've all heard that statement. This is not personal. This is business. So keep it business and don't take it personally.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. The rejection is hard. It just is, right? No one likes to be told no. They think it's something they did wrong. And to your point, and it could oftentimes be an alignment issue. It could also be that you're not a founder fit as well with what they want to do, right? And that is perfectly fine. I mean, we have relationships all over where some work and some don't. And that's just the way of life that it is you got to get back up and on your feet again and take it as a learning moment. The feedback that you get is invaluable, because you got to remember that these investors look at lots and lots of businesses and at many different phases of the VC investigation cycle, so to speak. And it's typically 3, like a high level pitch. And then you get to the point of, hey, I have some deeper questions. I want to see a demo. And then let's run through the numbers. And those are kind of the 3 meetings that tend to happen at an early stage company prior to the term sheet. And during those conversations, if you are asking for feedback all along the way, and there's fallout at every stage, right? And if you are asking for feedback, you can get better.
Yes.
And also, when you find that and create that inventory of potential investors for your business, I would start with the ones that are like on the borderline, right? Don't use the one that is the perfect fit for your first conversation. Use that as use some others as some good feedback loops for you to improve your pitch itself, the materials, and potentially your business model altogether. So that could be something that that you do, as you start from not the one that, oh my gosh, this is the perfect investor for me. I would work my way up to that one through some conversations. You have to remember that you're at conversation number 1, there's only like 50% brought back for conversation number 2, and only about 10% brought back for conversation 3. Like, and by the end, you're at 2% funding. Like, so remember that it's not just your business either. Most businesses do not make it to the end of the investor cycle, and businesses need to seek out other sources of funding or bootstrapping options. But rejection is something that is it's only going to make you better if you approach it the right way.
And I just want to add to that because the danger word there sometimes when you're going as a tech founder, and if there's any people listening that are Black and brown, female, LGBTQ, there are biases in there, and that is the reality that you're coming up against. So a founder fit can be very relative to what they mentally perceive as a fit. You can have a great product. You can have the numbers to prove it. You can have product market fit. And sometimes you are not what they have envisioned for their founder fit. And I think that is the unfortunate space. Also, being in professional sales, you may not look what they feel to trust, because ultimately people buy from who they trust. And sometimes that does have biases based on how you look and your gender and also your sexuality. So we want to be sensitive to that, because that is very important. And one of the things I can kind of say is that there are people actively working very hard to change that narrative. And so just to make yourself feel a little bit more confident in these spaces, I would recommend diversifying the type of investors and venture capital firms that you are pitching, because it can be a mentally tough road if you don't, because you have more elements that are going against you, and you don't want that to make you feel like what you're doing is not worth it, because it might be. Or if you diversify, you will see that maybe there's something I need to change about the process of my business that has nothing to do with me being a woman, a person of color, or my sexuality, right?
Right.
I bring that in there because it's very important, and it's a conversation that needs to, to have more global conversations around it. But I do want to be mindful of that as we're going into that, because that the rejection aspect of that, there are biases in these spaces, and we do need to be mindful of them, and it's unfortunate, but you can overcome it. And one of the ways is to find venture capital firms that focus on women, focus on LGBTQ, focus on Black and brown, focus on Black women, I think it's really important because then you'll be able to see clearer what you need to do and change in your business. Having advisors that are diverse, it allows for you to be like, okay, this is not about me. This is literally about the business. But if you surround yourself with all people that look like you or people that don't agree with you, you may not get a healthy perspective either. So I just wanted to add that component into what we're talking about.
Absolutely. That's a good ad.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Sakira. All right. So we have a minute left. Do we have anything else we want to add to this? Anyone have anything they want to say? Do we have any questions? I didn't see.
I'll while you look up questions, I'll offer up to the group. There are resources out there that can help you through this entire process. And it's not just my company that I'm advertising here. There are advisors out there. There are a bunch of accelerators that are, this is their sweet spot. They have people that come in on a pro bono basis, and you can get your pitch deck built and coaching around your pitch for a really reasonable price when you go through accelerators in your area. They're typically geographically focused. But I would seek out one of those, or there are companies like mine that can certainly help. Amber's like the expert on marketing and can certainly help build out that portion of your pitch. And Dr. Sakira, I'm sure, is going to help you get ready for kind of that pitch presentation and your mindset surrounding it for certain. So there are resources out there for you. All you have to do is reach out to them. And, it does take a little bit of kind of internal kind of reflection to know when you need an assist. But the resources out there for you to do so. So I encourage you to reach out.
Amber, we do have one question.
Yes, I saw that. It says, what are the advantages and disadvantages of a startup being included in a VC fund? This is from Claudia Dubois, Vice President of Sales at Payden. I don't know if I said that right, but that was her question. Claudia asked, what are the advantages and disadvantages of a startup being included in a VC fund? Heather, Dr. Sakira, and then I'll finish that one off because I think we all
have a perspective on that, right?
Yeah,
well, there are probably a lot, but maybe I'll highlight just a few. The advantage of being in the VC community is the awareness around your company. Number one is it gets brought to a different level of awareness as you think about branding and marketing, right? You now have a new champion to extend that brand and marketing. That's certainly number one. Well, not number one in any order, but the first thing that came to mind. Second thing is, of course, capital. You get an infusion of capital, whether that's meant for your business or not is the reflection you need to have. But the infusion of capital and subsequent capital needs is also just because the no investor is going to invest in your company. And then if you need another round of funding down the road, say no to that next round of funding, oftentimes because they want you to succeed, right? They want a return on their capital. So they are number one believers. It gives you a kind of a different boost to the business, so to speak, because you have runway. And you can build on that runway and have additional growth plans down the road because now you've got a backer, so to speak. So those are a couple of advantages. Disadvantages, the cap table. You're often going to give away a lot of your business when you take on a venture capital partner. And we see it all the time, they will, especially a first-time founder that is unfamiliar with how to evaluate a cap table and a term sheet, they can often get taken. And what you realize then at the end of the day is you have a business where you basically just become an employee and you're no longer the owner of that company. So be careful out there in that regard. I would say that would be the top reason why a con of working with a VC.
The one thing that came to mind to me is kind of more of a mastermind type of perspective. Because you have so many varied types of businesses that are in the VC, you have access to other people who you can develop connections with, who will help you think about your business in different ways. Because one of the biggest things that I think comes out of our intentional CEO masterminds are the looks at your business from, let's say you're a landscaping company, I don't know, and you have a printer, you have a coaching company, you have all of these different perspectives that are looking at the business that you're growing, and they're looking from their experience and from their business, and their eyes on you are going to see things that might be in your blind spot or might be a different way of going about growth. So having the opportunity to connect with other CEOs that are doing different types of businesses and allow you to next level your thinking, your funding, the aspects of your business that you may not have looked at.
Absolutely. I love both of what you all said. And just to conclude this and say our goodbyes, I think that there, depending on the type of company you have, you really might truly need a venture capital or angel investor network to scale it, especially if you're focused on SaaS enterprise. And if you don't have the skill set, again, to both of their points, you don't have the skill sets to build out like a B2B channel. Certain things can't be bootstrapped. So you'd have to really go back to, I'm not a tech founder, I'm an entrepreneur, and find other ways to generate income, right? And depending on the type of business you literally have, you will need funding upfront to get it going. The disadvantages is that you kind of don't, in my opinion, get some of the real grit that comes with purely being an entrepreneur and failing forward. You fail forward differently. That has way more, I think, costs literally incurred to it. And as a bootstrapper, you kind of have this similar cost, but it's a little different. So if you're looking to potentially do bootstrap, I would encourage, before a board of directors, get a board of advisors. And that'll help you move through bootstrapping. And I know it's helped me as I've made a decision to do that. And it feels like you're getting the support of a board or venture capital, because your network isn't always like your financial aspect to both of their points. So that's my component of that, because they said it so eloquently. I wanted to add that last little piece to that. But we are, again, behind time wise, but that's okay. I thought this was a great conversation. I appreciate both of you ladies coming on today and giving your expertise again. We really appreciate this. Thank you to everyone that listened in. Again, you can find us on all of our channels. Intentional CEO with Dr. Sakira Jackson. We have arenafo.com. And that's Heather Tuason. You can go to Arena on LinkedIn. And then I'm Amber. You can find me at Amber C. Payden on LinkedIn. And then thinksmark.com and ThinkSmark on LinkedIn. We have a fun think tank in Chicago, live summit, one-day summit in Chicago, June 8th and 9th, with a kickoff at Taste 222. If you haven't gotten your ticket yet, please go to thinksmark.com /think tanks. And we have 100 seats. Some are already taken, so hopefully you can be one of them. And I think that's it. I'm good to go. Do you all have anything else you have to say? Do you have anything coming up your way that you need, that are looking to promote or talk about?
Yeah. At Arena, we just launched our podcast, and it will start to talk about how to interact with your bank. So I encourage you to listen to that. You can find it on our website or our LinkedIn page.
Awesome.
Tony, we just launched our podcast. It's called the 2080 Rule, and you can find us on Spotify. So
hey,
come in there.
I love it. I love it. Round of applause.
And you can see us on Facebook for our real estate podcast, which is called Syndication Nation. So, and I'm everywhere, Dr. Sakira J. Everywhere on any social media you're looking for. Just come find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for watching. And we will have next month, we will be talking about taxes, which is always so much fun. And we might have a special guest. We'll see. So we will talk to you all later. Have a wonderful Thursday. Take care.
All right. Thanks for having us, Amber. See you next time.